I was 23 when this happened, working my second year at a big box electronics store on the edge of town. It wasn't the kind of place anyone dreamed of working, but it paid my rent and gave me enough structure to feel like my life was moving forward, even if slowly. I was quiet, dependable, the kind of employee managers liked because I didn't complain and always stayed late when asked. This happened in late November, the stretch of the year when it gets dark before dinner and the store feels strangely disconnected from the outside world. Fluorescent lights, looping promotional music, endless shelves of identical boxes. You could forget what time it was in there. I usually worked closing shifts at the customer service desk. Returns, warranty questions, people angry about things that weren't my fault. It was boring, predictable, and honestly comforting in its routine. That night started like any other. I remember because I almost called out sick. I had a dull headache and that heavy, foggy feeling that makes everything feel slightly off. But I needed the hours. So I drove in just before 5, parked under the flickering lot lights, and told myself it would be an easy night. A few hours, close the store, go home, sleep. Nothing about that night felt important at first. That's what still bothers me. The store was moderately busy when I clocked in. Holiday sales were starting, but it wasn't chaos yet. People wandered slowly, holding phones, comparing prices, arguing quietly with partners about which model to buy. The air smelled faintly like plastic packaging and burnt coffee from the break room. I took over the desk from Jenna, who looked exhausted and warned me that returns were extra stupid tonight. We laughed about it. She grabbed her coat and left, waving as the automatic doors slid shut behind her. For the next couple of hours, everything was normal. A guy returned headphones without the box. A woman demanded a refund for something she bought 6 months earlier. I smiled, nodded, followed policy. Around 7, I took my 15-minute break. I sat in my car scrolling through my phone, watching my breath fog the windshield. I remember texting my sister about Thanksgiving plans and complaining about my headache. She told me to drink water. I didn't. When I went back inside, the store felt quieter. Not empty, but thinner somehow. Fewer voices, more echo. The kind of quiet that makes you more aware of your own footsteps. I checked the clock behind the desk constantly after that. Time moved slowly. The music looped again. I folded receipts, straightened the counter, wiped down the surface even though it was already clean. At around 8:30, I noticed him for the first time. He wasn't doing anything obviously wrong. That's the part that made it hard to trust my own reaction. He stood near the phone accessories aisle, just within my peripheral vision from the desk. Mid-30s maybe. Average height. Dark jacket zipped up even though it wasn't cold inside. He wasn't holding a phone or a basket, just standing there, looking at the wall of products without reaching for any. At first, I assumed he was deciding. People do that. They freeze up when there are too many options. But every time I glanced up, his head was slightly turned toward the desk. Not fully, just enough that I could tell he wasn't really looking at the merchandise. I told myself I was projecting. It had been a long day. I went back to organizing paperwork. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps approach the counter. My stomach tightened for no reason I could explain. He stood directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something sharp and chemical. "Do you work here?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. How can I help you?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just looking." He didn't move away, didn't ask anything else, just stood there, staring at the counter, then at my name tag. I waited, then said, "Let me know if you need anything." He finally stepped back, but instead of walking into an aisle, he moved to the side of the desk and leaned against a display, still facing me. I tried to ignore it. Customers linger sometimes, but the longer he stayed, the more aware I became of how empty the store was getting, how few employees were visible, how the security guard hadn't walked by in a while. When I looked up again, he was watching me openly now. By 9:30, the store was almost empty. A few customers scattered in the back, one cashier at the front. That was it. He was still there. He hadn't bought anything, hadn't asked another question. He moved occasionally, drifting from one nearby aisle to another, but never far from the service desk, always within sight. I told myself to call a manager, but what would I say? There's a guy standing around. That felt ridiculous, paranoid. Then he did something small that changed everything. I bent down to grab a stack of forms under the desk. When I stood back up, he was closer. Too close. On the customer side of the counter, leaning forward slightly, like he had taken advantage of the moment my head was down. "You're here late," he said. "We close at 10, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. He nodded slowly. "Must get quiet." "Sometimes." Another pause, another look at my name tag. "You live nearby?" he asked. That's when the unease sharpened into something colder. "I can help you with a purchase," I said, ignoring the question. He smiled again. "I know." Then he walked away, deeper into the store. Relief washed over me so fast it almost made me dizzy, but it didn't last, because every time I turned my head after that, I felt it, that sense of being watched. And once, reflected faintly in a dark TV screen, I saw him standing at the end of an aisle, facing me, not shopping, waiting. 10 minutes before closing, the store was officially empty except for staff. I was finishing the closing checklist when I heard footsteps behind the desk. I turned, expecting a co-worker. It was him. "How did you—" I started. "The front doors are still open," he said calmly. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "We're closed," I said. "I can get a manager for you." He leaned closer, close enough that I had to fight the instinct to step back. "No need," he said. "I just wanted to see if you were as quiet as you looked." I froze. "What does that mean?" I asked. He shrugged. "Some people are." My hands were shaking now. I reached under the counter and pressed the call button for the manager, trying to keep the movement subtle. He noticed. His expression changed instantly. "Don't," he said. There was no anger in his voice, no shouting, just certainty. I pressed it anyway. Footsteps echoed from the back of the store. The moment broke. He straightened up, smiled one last time, and backed away. "Maybe next time," he said. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the exit. I watched him go, my legs barely holding me up. The manager called the police. They arrived 20 minutes later. I tried to explain why I was scared, but it sounded thin even to my own ears. The man hadn't touched me, hadn't threatened me. He just watched, asked questions. The officer took notes, nodded, and told me to be more aware of my surroundings. They reviewed the cameras. The footage showed him entering shortly after I came back from break. Lingering, watching, standing behind the desk when I wasn't looking. But when they tried to track him outside, the parking lot cameras had a gap, a blind spot. I went home that night and sat in my car for 10 minutes before going inside, convinced I was being followed. I quit that job a month later. It's been 3 years. Sometimes, when I'm in a store late at night, I still check reflections instead of aisles. Still notice who stands too still. Last week, I found an old receipt in a jacket pocket from that night. Folded small. On the back in shaky pen was my name. I don't remember giving it to anyone.